My internet's giving me problems.
Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci. I'm with Gary Groob. We have NLL Lacrosse talk every week, and this week we have Bergsma with us. Graham, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for us as well. So if I were to ask you, what in looking back into your history, what do you see yourself as, what you want to be remembered as? A player, a coach, where?
Oh, I mean, that's such a good question because I've dabbled in a whole bunch of it. I just would like to be remembered, hopefully more so from the coaching side, like more the inspiration, more the what I've been able to give back to the game. Like the game's been so good to me, whether it's been, here in Canada or internationally. It really changed my life in a lot of ways. And so what I've been able to do in terms of helping to give that game back to more people, whether that's increase their enjoyment of it or open it up to new people around the world, to me, the more people that get to experience lacrosse, the better. So if I can have some small part in that, I'm happy.
You answered the second question first, according to how we normally do things, but that's okay. So now the first question, what made you pick up a stick?
So that's actually a great story. So my dad actually played pro for Jimmy Bishop in Detroit in the 70s, but I didn't know that lacrosse existed because he played when there was no helmets, and he stopped counting at 110 stitches in his face. So I guess he thought it was a little too violent for me. So he was part of the original ownership group of the Toronto Rock. And so he took us to their first game at Maple Leaf Gardens, and I was immediately hooked. I said, Dad, you got to find me a place to play this. And I was lucky enough that, we were living in North Toronto, so the only place we could really go is the beaches. And so I was lucky enough to have parents that would drive me down all the way to the beaches for practices and games and everything else, and got on with the team there. And then the rest was sort of history. Played all my minor and junior up through there, and had a great time in the beach. So,
and the beaches where I for 8-10 years did play.
I did hear that you were the voice for Rogers for the beaches when Paul was trying to knock you over.
Yeah, when it would rain the next day in the arena. Bergsma Arena was notorious for a whole terrible roof, an underlined hole. There were a bunch of holes. It was like watching lacrosse players all dropping buckets around the arena to catch the drips, and then the game would start maybe 10-15 minutes late when it would stop. Yeah, the game has evolved, and you're a good reason why it's evolved. You're one of the players that's decided to be a part of helping it to evolve. Yeah. I guess my question before I hand it over to Gary is, what do you see as either the most important step in the past, the most important step in the present, or the most important step in the future to help change lacrosse to the point where it goes to the next level?
Well, I mean, I probably got one for all of those. And I think one of the biggest changes that happened was the advent and the evolution of sort of stick technology. So plastic sticks made the game so much more accessible and able to have that. You could replicate it a lot easier than having somebody have to really take the time to get their catgut in good with the old traditional sticks. And I mean, it's amazing that there are still people around that are still doing that wonderful traditional sticks. But I think that made a huge change. And now I think, and this might get me into hot water, but I think if we could come more together as a lacrosse community, like the lacrosse community is one of the smallest, most tight-knit groups, except we tend to kind of battle on things an awful lot. And sometimes the game suffer because we can't all get on the same page on things, and whether that's professionally and some of the stuff between the MLL and the NLL, or whether that's, the different provinces, whatever it is, I think if we could really put all of that aside and put the kids and the game first, it would go a long way to helping grow the game and make this whole thing a lot easier.
I suppose to be the devil's advocate, and I mean truly the devil's advocate here, I guess they don't want to risk what they have in the hopes that they get something better. I think that's the underlying issue that everybody has. I think it's more than just we want to play the game different.
Yeah.
We figured out our little area here, and I don't know if we can work with your area. Will we gain together, or will we lose each other?
And I get that, and I can understand. Some organizations have spent so much time and resources and money and blood, sweat, and tears building something that they can be proud of. And I get not wanting to open that up and risk it. And I understand it, but I just I feel like we'll hit a ceiling if we do that. And sometimes you got to have a little bit of faith, and hopefully that faith gets returned with positive stuff as opposed to more negative. But
yeah, so the big question is, what does the top of the pyramid look like? We know what the pyramid looks a little lower, but how do you build it to the very top? And that's the question, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, and I mean the beaches as a great example, right? Is even at the youth level, like is that top of the pyramid even within an organization? Is that the rep team? Is that house league? Where can you make the biggest growth, and how do those two coexist? And that's just not an easy answer. I mean, there isn't really a right answer. But I just wish we had the dialogue a little bit more, and we could have those conversations without it ending up in a screaming match. So whatever ends up getting decided, at least everybody was at the table.
Pun intended. Getting to the point, if you will, the top of the pyramid's the challenge.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a friend. We have a friend that chimed in for you.
I mean, Mick's right now. Like, hey, they're on pace to have another winning record or a non-losing record. Oh, hooray! But yeah, that was a bad choke job there against.
Today was a rough one. Yeah, I sat through that and it was nasty. Let's go back to the beaches and really let's talk about the program when you got in. What made that environment so special for you?
I think it was the players a lot. And I mean, Ted Reeve Arena is just a wonderful place to play. And there was really that sense of community, which was really funny because a lot of the guys on that team weren't necessarily beaches specific. We had a lot of Scarborough and outside kids on the team. But I think that was what was really special, was a bunch of guys from all over the place that kind of came together and had a common goal. And we underperformed as a junior team throughout. We had so much talent, like guys that went on and did great things in the NLL. Kevin Ross, Stephen Keogh, all of those guys, Mac Allen. But we always seemed to end up playing Orangeville in the first round and getting swept because they were a wagon at the time. But I don't know, we never really reached our potential, which was kind of sad. But it was a good group of guys.
Right. Who would you say would be the early mentors to help shape your game?
Steve Keekott was one of them. Brett and I were really, really close to his son, and he coached our teams for a little bit. Wales, who was one of our early coaches there, was really good at instilling some of the fundamentals, even at a high level of the game, which would help me as a player, but also now when I'm coaching. Like, too much that I see in coaching is getting into the technical stuff, and you've got players that are tremendous talents, but they don't understand the fundamentals of how to play a 3-on-2 or how to play a 2-on-1. And so having that was very helpful. My dad was helpful when I was, when I would actually listen to him. Nobody really listens to their dad that much. They probably should. But that was pretty huge. Blaine Manning was actually a big influence on me from facing off when he came out with our beaches team in my Pee Wee I think Pee Wee or Bantam years. I was lucky enough to just, I tried to find every mentor I possibly could, in terms of always trying to learn. Like I was later to the game to start than most. So like I started behind the 8 ball. I had to try and learn as much as I could. So I was lucky enough to have really great people to soak that up from.
Right. Now you also split your time because you did field and you did box with the beaches. Let's talk about a bit of the field thing because you won the under 16.
I didn't hear that last part. Sorry, Gary.
I say you won the under 16 championship with the field team. So let's talk a bit about splitting your time doing field and box.
Well, it was interesting the way the beaches did it. It wasn't really splitting your time. It was kind of the same team that we didn't have that many guys to play from. So we maybe had 1 or 2 guys that played exclusively field or box. But that was great. Like I remember when I came on in Pee Wee, like we were losing to Whitby 6 or Oshawa 6 by like 20 goals. This is back when Oshawa had a 9 team. And then I think we lost in the in the finals of B and that second year of Pee Wee, and then in Bantam we ended up going to in Bantam we ended up in B, and then we just kept getting better and better and better, and we would add one piece and we would grow a little bit, and then by the time we were midget, we ended up winning the national championship. Won Ontario's on a crazy last-minute play, and then went off to Winnipeg and won there. And then we also had a lot of success that year at summer games from the box side. And I think it really was the fact that it wasn't a field team and a box team, but it was the same group of guys for the most part playing together. So we just got much better chemistry. We got to know each other better. We developed not just as players, but as a team. And we had some really, really good doing some pretty good things.
Right. Now, nowadays, anyways, especially adversity and pressure is huge in junior. Was it the same back then, or was it a little bit more relaxed?
I mean, adversity and pressure, yeah. Of course it was there back then. And it was, there was so many good teams back then. It was not, very top heavy. Everybody from 1 to 6 had a shot at it. You had Peterborough with Evie and Stainer and those guys, and then you had Orangeville with the Veltmans and Rosie and just Hall of Fame guys on almost every team. So there was a fair amount of adversity, and I think we kind of probably created a lot of that adversity for ourselves.
Right.
But overcoming that stuff, it was tough because you always felt at the end of the year that you go, okay, well, we've learned some lessons from that adversity, but too late to actually put it into effect, and then you restart it over the next year. Hopefully, you learn some good lessons again the next year.
Right. Now let's just move on to a bit of college, and you went to Fairfield. What drew you over to Fairfield?
A mistake probably, but so I was recruited. Like, I still remember going to the Final Four my first year, and all 4 teams in the Final Four I'd been recruited by. But I kind of lucked out too. Like, where I really wanted to go was Duke. I was recruited by Mike Pressler to go down after Zach Greer. But if I had gone there, I would have ended up as a rookie on that scandal team that would have, was very, very hard on a lot of those guys' lives. So I ended up at Fairfield. There was a great recruiting pitch, beautiful campus, good school too. It was a top business school in the Northeast, which was really important to me, and really, really that I wasn't just going down to play lacrosse. I was there for school as well. And then I was lucky enough to get to play for Mearnsey my 5th year there at Canisius. I had redshirted my sophomore year because of my back. So I had an extra year of eligibility, and Canisius was, right across the border. My family was living in St. Catharines at the time, and Mearnsey was good with Canadians, and ended up having a good time there as well.
Right. How did you learn about leadership at the NCAA level?
I learned through example, and both what to do and what not to do. I had, whether it was from my junior team or NCAA, I had a lot of experience with, what didn't help people get better, what made people sort of come inside or be afraid to do things. And so when I got to see the other side of it, and some of the leaders that weren't necessarily the big vocal leaders, but the guys that led by example and were always there in your corner, that became very evident. And that's who I wanted to be as a player and a leader for people going forward, was the guy that, like little things like, oh, rookies bring the balls out. No, screw that, right? Like, veterans bring the balls, veterans bring the beer, veterans, like that. That's always been my mentality, is if you want to get these young guys to do that, show them, like, look, we're here for you. We're going to do this. And then, then they're like, well, I don't want the vet to be doing this. I'm going to go do it. And that becomes a much more lasting message that helps them grow as people, as opposed to, well, I'm just going to do this because I'm the schnook and somebody wants me to do it. Like, that never works.
Right. Now, most Canadians, when they're going out to play field, or Canadian playing box on a field, you had the field experience. So it was your mentality of picking it up NCAA style easier than, say, somebody else who really had only a box background.
Well, it should have been. Well, it's funny because, the field that we played for the most part until our very last year when we ended up winning the national championship was basically boxing field. Like nobody understood motion offense or anything. Like I still remember my dad coached us that year, him and Steve Peacock, and drawing out the motion offense. I'm just thinking of it as two triangles, and they never quite understood how it was really supposed to work. So I had the basics down. And it's funny because I got recruited for being very Canadian. The Leap camp that Matt Greer and AJ Shannon ran in Durham got a lot of guys looked at, but I got recruited for the Canadianness, and then immediately got there and they tried to beat the Canadian out of you, which was a little interesting. Probably why not many Canadians have gone to Fairfield. But in that, also had a coach come in after my sophomore year who was like me, really understood and thought through the game and really helped me to finally figure out what that motion offense was actually supposed to be like. And so I think originally it didn't really help me at all, but I had that field background. And then afterward, when a coach actually took the time and put this together and really helped explain it as opposed to say, just do this, it really just clicked. And then I was very successful with that, from whether it was the Dutch national team or playing in Ontario here in the fall. It went a long way.
Right. It's interesting you're bringing that up because we talked earlier about grassroots and things like that. And Mark Mellon, when he was on the show, talked about how we spent a lot of money, US and Canada, from club level and above. And we really do neglect the grassroots for the guys who aren't going to be the NLL player, aren't going to be the PLL player, but just love the game. Do you think that we're starting to get on track with that, or we're still really missing the boat on that?
I mean, I would think it's probably regionally specific and program specific and everything else. But I think, one of the hardest things and best things that's happened to lacrosse is it's now become kind of a money sport, whether it's, having money for, travel teams and everything else. And the fact that now you can actually make a decent living at it is propelling things to D1 and propelling people to the NLL has kind of become more to the forefront. And I still look at this as a game that is going to affect an awful lot more people than the pros and the D1 guys. And it has a chance to be a gateway for them to grow as people, to grow as men, to grow as women, to grow as members of their community. And that's where I think we're missing the boat as important as the score is. Like, I hate that whole idea. We're just playing to have fun. Like, the score doesn't matter. But the benefits that come outside of the score and outside of winning are going to last and be a lot more impactful in way more kids' lives than, winning, or like even the national championship that we won, right? Like, we had the epitome of that. I don't remember the winning of the national championship. I remember times with my teammates and the bus and playing mini sticks and those things, and learning, how to work together and deal with, social stuff like that. That was more important to me and what I remember from that than beating Coquitlam 3 times in the tournament. Like that didn't matter as much.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I also think that as a whole, that's the fan base of the future, because the ones who aren't going to make it are going to be the ones sitting watching. And as long as you cultivate that love, they're always going to be there, and they're going to pass it down generationally as well. So,
and we're like, just lacrosse is such an easy game to love. I don't know very many people who see it and don't instantly fall in love with it. It's fast, it's physical, It's got everything you could possibly want. And I think, part of what makes lacrosse so great is we're such a tight-knit community. And it's the same thing that Frank was talking about before on, like, do we want to risk that to grow it? And it's like, well, if we open it up to more people are really going to love it, because it's just a game that's easy to love. But do you lose part of that where, like, you show up to a rink in Owen Sound and there's about a 98% chance that you're going to know 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people from there. And that feeling is amazing. And if it grows, do we lose that tight-knit family feel? I think there's a way to grow kind of the size of it without losing that. But I get where some people might be worried about that, because it is something that makes it so special.
The same thing's true,
right.
or if players.
Go ahead, Frank.
It's okay. Same thing goes for if players make more money. Let's say the business plan leads to more games, more pay for the players. Will that create a disconnect between the players and the fans? I'm not suggesting or guaranteeing that's the case, but that's always, part of the stuff, the yin and the yang that we have to always consider. And maybe that's part of the fear that's in there as well.
Yeah, to me, it's a little bit yes and no. Like, I think that there needs to get to a point when guys have to have other jobs, when they can't be a lacrosse player, the game suffers. Because part of the reasons why when sometimes like the NCAA teams beat world championship teams or beat these pro teams, because they're playing every single day for 2-3 hours. Like, if those guys were able to actually be there and practice together all the time and not have to worry about their other job or some of these other things, the game would grow and evolve and get better. Now, yeah, if it got to a point where they're making $5, $6, $7 million a year, yeah, okay, maybe that's a problem or might create issues. But I think if the game's so good, and if we got it out to enough people, they would enjoy it enough that those guys would be worth that. And to me, I think that all starts with getting them enough where they can actually make that their living, because they're the best in the world at it. Why not have it that they can be the best of their best by being able to do that every day? And yeah, I get that there are constraints on that, and it's not as simple as saying, yeah, okay, here you guys go. But I would love to see that to be where people could actually be professional lacrosse players would be fantastic, where that is there. So, and some guys have been lucky enough to be able to do it because they're smart enough to do apparel or camps or endorsements. But I would love it that every guy who's we've got a wonderful player in Jack Hanna who can't necessarily is wants to be because of his outside work related stuff and personal related stuff. Like that's so hard for a guy who's as incredible as he is to have to make that choice. And to me, it would be great if we were in a circumstance where he didn't have to make that choice.
I'm going to drill down just a little bit further on that point.
Yeah, go ahead.
The point, what we're talking about here is the evolution of not just the game, but the game and its relationship with the fans. What I'll add as well to that, because I wanted to make sure we made this point as well. So we lose the connection, the direct connection to the players, maybe because there's more demand on their time and stuff because they're full-time players. But the upside is you end up with a better game. You end up with better players. So all I'm trying to point out is there's some of the things that are great that we have in lacrosse today, but on balance, making the game better, there might be some sacrifices, but I don't think any fan would deny that distance between players and themselves for the sake of a better game and better players.
Yeah, and I would hope that it wouldn't actually end up that way, right? Because as salaries increase, part of what you taught when you talk to professional athletes is that part of that salary is a marketing payment, right? And that part of doing that is that you need to be at fan events and you need to be doing community engagement and you need to be doing it. Yeah, it sucks for the players that they lose a little bit of their autonomy and having lives outside the game. But I think if we got to that point, it wouldn't actually create bigger distance. It could actually shorten that distance because these players don't have to be like, well, I can't go to this event because I've got to go to my 9 to 5. Right? Like they'll actually be able to go and do that and make part of their job engaging with fans and growing the fan base. And again, I'm what I call a pragmatic idealist. I like to think that the best is possible, but I would love to see that, but I don't know. And that's where every individual franchise, however they're going to do it. But I would guess that the ones that are going to get the most bums and seats and the most revenue are going to be the ones that really take advantage of their wonderful talent and people and get them in touch with their fan base, because those guys and the game are what's going to sell tickets. And the ones that are smart enough to do that are going to be more successful.
I'm a realist too, and I hope for the positive as well. And I was just raising a point that I think it's just one of the challenges of when a sport becomes a bigger and bigger business, and it's one of the things that just happens. But always there's always an upside and a downside to every change. There's two things everybody wants: change, and there's two things that everybody wants: change and no change. You can't have both. You got to kind of live with what one brings the other.
Yeah. What I might be worried about is that when the pro level becomes that, well, this is your gig. Like it might trickle down to the minor level in that the motivation for playing and for doing things and making decisions is about solely getting to that level and getting drafted. And that we've seen that in hockey. We've seen that in lots of different sports where, teams, but more importantly, kids kind of get caught up in that, especially when they don't have the agency over themselves early on and they're being treated kind of like a lottery ticket. One of the things that I've loved about the game is whether it's somebody playing house league or, a suitcase around the senior loop like me, is people are playing because they really enjoy the game, and hope to make sure that the vast majority of kids are playing because they enjoy it and not because they're hoping to have their future taken care of.
You're 100% right. And you used a word which comes into play here at this point. It's the dynamics of change, the dynamics of becoming a big league as opposed to a big game, because that's what lacrosse is. It's a big game to a lot of people. Like you said, different leagues, different teams, different organizations, different ways to play. Its roots are deep. They're just wide. That's all. And to create, to have it rise up, there's some challenges. There's some real challenges, but I think everybody's ready for those challenges, and smart people like yourself and dumb people like me that have a lot of questions. Between the two of us, I think we can help, in the path to the kind of success that I think all of us want. And that is for players to be rewarded for A, their hard work, and B, their commitment.
Yeah. And I would say the one asking questions is generally the smart one. The one who thinks that they're answering them is generally the dumb one.
Lots of babes.
I also look at it the other way is, do we lose some of the people because one of the selling points has been being able to get an education in an Ivy League school on a scholarship for lacrosse, and getting your MBA in finance or whatever you're taking. And if it's going to be, we're going straight towards a professional career, do we lose some of those guys who want?
I don't think we do. I think we actually open that up to more people, right? Because now the best are going to play D1. And so that's no longer there. Whereas now you're going to get that elite tier that may skip and go directly to pro. And then those spots that would have been taken up by them at those schools are now going to be open to that next echelon down of player who's like, you know what? Like, yeah, I might go play pro, but I certainly know I can do something with getting 4 years of education. I mean, we see this in hockey, right? You've got guys that go to the O, and you've got guys that play OHA and then go play in the NCAA for 4 years. I think you might not have the same people go to the NCAA, but I think as long as there are spots there, and as long as Canadians continue to be a hot commodity in the NCAA, I think that those spots, like the NCAA teams, aren't going to all of a sudden be like, yeah, we don't want to be as good because those guys are going pro. They're still going to come down and or come up and grab kids. So I think it could actually be better, because so if we said those guys are going there, but really whether we do it or not, if that's their goal is to go pro, that becomes their main goal. And does that take away from their focus or anything else in the NCAA, as opposed to, if kids that are doing and going there because this is what they want to do, great. And the kids that want to go pro can go pro.
We can see already the templates out there in hockey. Yeah. You have, college teams still need players, and they bring players in, they get their education. But now the junior teams also can send kids to college. So that the template's there, that if lacrosse became popular enough that there's too many of them that are in college, so they need to do a different way of playing, they still can get the education and just do it through the same way juniors do it. So
and then do we have to worry about that whole issue with, there are some pro players playing in the OLA, for instance, and does that technically disqualify other people who are playing in the OLA from playing in the NCAA? And would we have to have like an OLA and an OLHA or whatever you want to, like the version like you have in hockey? Would you have to have a whole separate junior loop that was only strict amateurs? Now, I think we need to vastly grow the amount of people playing lacrosse at that level. But again, that's something we could hope for, and hopefully we can make that work.
All of that would be under the heading, the problems we would like to have.
All right, I want to move over to your international side
Sure.
and playing for the Dutch. Of course, I get the Dutch jersey above my head. How did that?
Uh-oh.
Well, I think Gary froze, but I think what he was asking is how did that come about? And so that was really interesting. Is Frank Pearson, who was the head ref for the FIL, was talking to my mom at a tournament or something when the World Championships were in London in 2006, and said, "Hey, like I know you guys are Dutch. Does he want to play?" And so she told me about it. They said I reached out to the team. They said, "Oh, I told them, I'm playing junior A. I'm going to play D1." And they said, "Great, if you get your passport, you're on the team." So I went to the consulate and got, showed them all the documents that were needed and got my Dutch citizenship, and then showed up and played in 2006 in London at the World Championships. And we ended up it was crazy for me because I was just worried hey, am I going to get along with these guys? Am I going to have anything in common? And I didn't realize how Dutch I was until hanging out with these guys. Like they all had that same sort of humor, and they were just the funniest guys in the world. We ended up having an amazing time. We ended up being the first team ever to win their first game. We ended up, doing very well in that first tournament, and then that was it from there. Then it was, we came 2008. We played in the European Championships in Finland and ended up shocking the world. We came second. We beat Germany. We lost to England in the final. That was a big deal. And then 2010, we actually ended up, we were up on Japan in the quarterfinals. And then our goalie ended up coming out of the cage and tore his hamstring. And not only did we lose him, but they also put the ball in the empty net. And we just couldn't hold on in the second half. But if we had won that game, we would have played USA in a semifinal and have been playing for a bronze medal. Well, maybe we would have beat the USA, but I doubt it. But we probably would have ended up playing for a bronze medal. But even so, we finished top 10 in the world. And then when the box program started, we had that same initial success. And so it's been really, really great. And then now the next iteration of that is now the women's box team that was amazing in the first World Championships. And man, did that re-energize in seeing their passion and how much they were really playing for the love of the game and how competitive and how physical and how great they were as both people and players. And so I wanted to be a part of that very badly. I ended up coaching them in Prague at Shebox and did very well there. So the international game has been we talk about, being able to grow the game while keeping some of that community and everything else involved. I think, we need to look at the international game as a template for that, because that has grown exponentially across the world to the point where we've now got to have qualifiers for some of these tournaments. But they've maintained that love of the game, community first feeling. So I think they've done it very, very well.
Gary's twin Jerry is here now.
We had power failure over here, and thank goodness for backup plans, and here we are. It's a little bit of everything today. It's been wild. I want to talk a little bit more about the women's thing, because you took over the program and you actually moved it forward. Let's talk about picking it up where you got it and bringing it on forward.
Sure, and I want to be very clear that I didn't take over the program. I was part of a staff that picked that up and went on, led by Lynette Leachy, and we had Martin, who was a wonderful help from being local in the Netherlands. But they showed so much promise at the World Championships, and I just wanted them to have the best possible opportunity that they could to grow. And so I just put my hand up and said, however you want me to be involved, I'd love to be involved. And so the next big tournament was Shebox in Prague. And so showed up there with girls that were based locally in the Netherlands and some girls based in North America. And we had a whole training camp and come together and played these games. And it was fantastic. Like they were so hungry and thirsty for knowledge that they picked up things so quickly. And one of the things that I was the most proud of was not just how great they were at play, but their characters started getting better and talk about adversity. So we were playing the hometown Czech team, and there was some questionable calls early in that game, we'll say. I don't want to go into anything further than that, but it was something that they hadn't experienced really yet, was that whole idea of like, we're doing everything right, but the results aren't happening. And I just, brought them in and was like, oh, like, you're not going to get any calls. We're playing the hometown team. Like, this is just, you're not going to get calls. You haven't been through this before, but trust me, I have. But just concentrate on what you're doing. Come out next shift. Just do what you can on that shift. And we were down like 4 or 5 goals, I think, in the first half, and they scored one. And they came out the next one, and they scored another one, and we ended up coming away with that game. But just how much that they were able to, in the heat of that moment when everything was falling apart and nothing was going their way, how they showed the ability to actually like calm themselves and center themselves. That to me was showing that, they have the potential to do anything, because not only do they have the talent, not only do they have the physicality, but they had the mental fortitude to be able to deal through adversity. Any team that's going to win anything of import, it's that mental side, because shit's going to go wrong during a tournament, during a game, during something else. If you fall apart, you're not winning anything. But if you can stay the course, then you've got a chance.
You okay there, Gary?
I am getting things back together again. Like I say, we had a power failure here, so trying to get things back to just a little wild around here. Let's go to the rescue tournament, and you've been with the Gales a couple of times, and let's talk about the first step and your first sight of seeing this place.
Yeah, so I mean, I was lucky enough that, talking about my dad playing back in the day, he played for St. Catharines, so he knew the Louis, and so Doug was kind enough to kind of appreciate my character and my game and wanted me to come along. I had no idea what to expect. I knew international lacrosse, but I didn't really understand. You show up in Raritan, and like the whole town is just basically centered around this outdoor box with this giant 3-story building with the big eagle on top and everything. And when you figure out what that building used to be, it's a little different, but it's really cool when you first see it. And just playing in this tournament that was just people all over the world. It's the biggest club tournament in the world. And just all these teams that were, and really back then it was always sort of like you were a club team, but you were really the international team. So you had some kind of that flavor and that dynamic from your country. And then getting to play in the finals and having there be like 2,000 people there under the lights with the big jumbotron at the end, and scoring a goal on the power play and getting to watch the replay of your goal and seeing the crowd go wild. It was something that you can't call yourself a box player until you've been there and played. Like, that's got to be on everybody's bucket list. It's like the field of dreams of lacrosse, of getting to see these people and just, and then going with the Gales and understanding what the Gales and the history and the family honor, pride, tradition of the Gales means there in particular. Seeing kids come out and want your autograph and still have, you slap the sticker on their helmet, and you go 5 years later and that kid's 12 now, but he still got that helmet. He hasn't washed it because he could never imagine having that Gale sticker come off. Is really, really cool. And you get to start to know people like Andre and the people in the bar, and they're just wonderful people that go through an awful lot of trouble to put that on every year. And as much thanks as they get, they don't get nearly enough. So it is one of the coolest experiences I've ever been a part of, not just in lacrosse, period. And if you consider yourself a box lacrosse player, I think you have to go at some point.
Right. Let's fast forward to your second time here with the Gales, and just the improvement of European lacrosse from when you were first going to where it is now.
Yeah, like it used to be, there was the Czech team and, maybe a team from England that would come over and be decent, but it was basically the Canadian teams would run show or would lose to the Czechs in the final because they were tremendous. And now it is, you saw the Finnish team who was fantastic. Had guys drafted in the NLL, had guys drafted in the first round of senior. You've got the level of lacrosse across the world has gotten, you can't even describe how much better it has gotten, and it's made the level of play overall that much more competitive, that much more where anybody can really win it in any given year. And it's been good to see some of the teams that are coming over from North America have to up their game and really bring a stronger unit. And it's an interesting tournament because it's not always about who's the best. It's not always about who drinks the most. It's kind of generally who can do a mixture of the two and still be fine. But it's a slog, right? You're playing 6-7 games in a few days, so injuries or everything else come into play. But it's not a cakewalk anymore. There are multiple European teams that are very good that compete in the Senior B loop here in Canada, and that have a real shot to win the tournament. So, and a lot of that's been because of good coaching and guys finding the ability to go and make a living growing the game abroad. Like I was lucky enough to do that on the field side in Berlin for a year. Won the German championship over there with BHC. But there's those opportunities in box lacrosse now, which is really, really cool to see.
I guess Gary Freeze again?
No, I think he's there. I think he's just figuring out what he's doing.
Just thinking. Yeah. Just when it comes to what we're trying to do.
Move on to the.
Are you okay? Go ahead, Gary. I don't think he can hear me. So.
Yeah.
My apologies. Let's go to the Arena Lacrosse League, and you've been in there since the inception, and let's talk about that from your playing to player personnel to all the different hats you wear there, because I think it's a vital part of development for anybody who wants to become a pro and play a pro.
Yeah, and I mean, this all started before Arena Lacrosse League with CLAX, right? And this was, you only had the NLL for this high level to play in the winter, and outside of that, you had to wait for the summer to really play like decent ball. And so, Paul St. John put together this CLAX, the Canadian Lacrosse League, and he actually, I was sort of one of the poster boys originally for that, because it was all about bringing back the old way of playing. Instead of this, straight offense, straight defense, it was let's try and create a more fluid, faster game with guys that can play both ends of the floor. And so, he sort of put me up as one of those guys, and it was a really, really great league, and it did very well. And then, some things happened, and it didn't really work out, but Paul wasn't going to take that no for an answer. And so he came up with the Arena Lacrosse League. And it was funny because when it was originally get started, we were looking at this to be an ability for, Mick wants to talk about the 2016, the original ALL championship. We were on the
original one, yeah. He was on as well, yeah.
And what a game that was. But and we can get into that. That whole season got turned around by, a bunch of guys out really late at night in London and bonding over defending women's honors on the streets of London. So there's some good stories from that. But the Arena Lacrosse League came around, and it was Paul wasn't going to take no for an answer, and brought this together and figured out how to make it work. And really, kind of looked at it as sort of a minor league for the NLL, and it really was that. There was 20 guys that went up in that first year from the ALL up to the NLL and played games or multiple or stuck around. And you look at that talent on some of those original teams, half that team played in the NLL or still playing in the NLL. You had guys like Higgy and Damon Edwards and Frick and his younger brother, and so many guys on that team that went on to do incredible things. And Paul takes a lot of flack, honestly, but not enough people, I think, really appreciate that level of lacrosse that was unbelievable then and is still very good now, that wouldn't exist without the blood, sweat, and tears that he's put into it. And that there's a lot of guys that have gotten shots in the NLL and have careers because of that opportunity to play. And it'll be really interesting to see how that evolves, and how involved the NLL gets in it and everything else. Because it's a hard one. It's really hard where you could see it where, okay, well, let's have minor teams and have each franchise have their own. But when they can pull from anybody in the league, like that's a hard benefit to give up. So figuring out how to make that work, and there's much smarter people than I that will put their hat in that ring and try to figure that out. But I would love to see it continue to grow, because it's a really great opportunity for very high level lacrosse during the winter that isn't the NLL. And it's been really great for me. And somehow I'm still playing. I'm now playing. Speaking of the beaches, I'm playing with the son of a guy I played minor with. So I'm the elder statesman and a half now, but it is what it is.
Right. Well, how would your role have changed over the years there as being one who just came into play to one now who's more of a mentor and really leading a bunch of these younger guys to the right direction? Because about 35 guys have been put into the NLL and stayed there. So it's a good source.
Yeah.
for
I think
players.
it's interesting, but even at the beginning of the ALL, that's kind of how I saw my role, even when I wasn't really one of the older guys. Like I remember one of the specific examples was Mike Triolo, and he was this unbelievable sort of raw talent on that original Oshawa Outlaws team, and I knew he was going to eventually do something big, but he seemed to, I don't want to say afraid, but reticent to kind of step into part of that leadership role. And it was something as simple as like, I made him do the warm up. Like I made him lead the warm up. And it was funny when we were having that night out in London, we ended up in a hotel room after, 100 beers or so, and having a chat about why I did, because he thought I was picking on him. And it was like, no, like I was putting you in that because I didn't want him to be seen by other people as like not doing, like I wanted to put him in that position where he could be that leader and do that. And it was funny, you could just see it kind of like click in his head and go, oh, and now like what he did, both, what he's been doing in the NLL and what he was doing out in St. Albert with, and he's really become not just a wonderful player, but a leader and a great human being. And I mean, I'm not taking credit for that, but it's just one of those things where I've always tried, you tell people to do things, they're not going to do anything, right? Like external motivation doesn't do anything, but I've always tried to help people to create internal motivation and try to put people in positions where like they see that they're capable of more than maybe they did before. And to me, that's the really cool thing, is helping others to reassess their own limits and to want to be more, and then to be more than they thought they could be, has been really cool.
I think you have another one now under your belt, being with Collingwood in OSL, by the name of Angus Rotting. And I think he fits in that same kind of mold as a Mike Triolo. And with the right leadership, it can be a really great thing for him down the road.
Yeah, and Angus is a tremendous talent. And it's one of those interesting things where like I'd always rather, have to pull a guy back than to get him out the gate. And I think, Angus had some rough goes in terms of, just stuff not working out. But I think he's finally bringing it all together, and he was getting the confidence in himself that we all saw in him. Like he saw the player that we all saw in him. And then, of course, as shit happens, the guy has like 5 goals in our first game and then tears up his knee and is out for basically most of the season. So I'm really, really excited to see what he can do this year. And honestly, I hope we don't see him a whole lot, because I'm hoping that he's going to be playing a whole bunch of senior A. I mean, I would love to have him, but again, I hope that he has the utmost success at that side. But he's a guy, like he's a monster. He's a 6'5" monster who's got a rocket shot and is shifty. So the sky's the limit for him. And I just hope he gets to reach whatever potential he's got. So, and he's also a good kid.
Yeah, that's the big thing too. He jinxed himself over in Prague by saying, I remember him telling me that he'd never gotten hurt before when he twisted his ankle. Yeah. And well, that's the taboo. never
you got to knock on wood after that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you've coached everywhere from the Hill Academy over to Berlin. What really ties all the experiences together?
Just, that I'm learning as much from them as they are from me. I'm coaching since a young age, and realizing that like the tactics is so much less than everything that goes into coaching, and understanding, having to see players as more than just players and them as people, and understand, oh, okay, they're having problems or obstacles on that. Like, why? Get to know like what's going on. Is there something in their personal life? Is it just a block mentally? Has nobody ever explained this to them? Like, I think all of those opportunities have been been really great because they've been, getting to see all of those challenges and different challenges from different people for different reasons. And so now I'm lucky enough to have a bigger repertoire so that when I go into and see somebody that wants to go from here to here, I've got a lot more examples of reasons that might be keeping them from getting there. So I can hopefully, open their eyes to one of those so that they don't have to make the same hard mistakes that I and that others have made over and over and over again. We all know, though, people don't really tend to learn lessons the easy way.
Right. What advice would you give junior A players now who are trying to carve their own path?
Figure out who you are. One of the beauty things about lacrosse is that there is a space in this game for every different kind of player. You can be short and quick, and you can be tall and have great hands, or you can be, a fat guy with great muscles, or what. Like, there's a million different things. And I think one of the hardest things that players have is trying to figure out, like, they get this idea of what they're supposed to be in their head, and so they're chasing this thing that maybe they're not equipped for, and missing this wonderful other player that they can actually be. And so really take the time to figure out, like, what's in your game and what isn't. And if it isn't, maybe you want to work on that, but, like, knowing what isn't there and being okay with that and working on those things is really important. But then also, like, really, really, really try to understand that the game is more than just you. You can be the best talent, you can have the best shakes, you can have the best shot. Like, learn how, like, if you can learn how to work within an offensive or defensive system, all of your skills get amplified by being put in better positions and by helping out everybody around you. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen with this, this advent of, the D1 and the recruiting tapes and all that, is the game's become a lot more like me focused, and we lose a lot of that more concept. And so you've got specific coaches that are really, like Frick's one of them, that really works on trying to bring back that idea of the whole team and the system. And it's tough because sometimes fitting in the system initially is going to make you maybe have less points or less goals or whatever else it is. But in the long run, you're going to get more, and the team is going to do better. And the guys that are really looking, like the scouts in the NLL or anywhere else, like, trust me, they see that guy that gave up his shot to get a much better opportunity, and they want that guy over, the guy just shooting 30 shots a game and getting his points. But I get, like, stat lines are what gets people to come out to your games. But once they're there, trust me, they're going to see that difference. So it's a tough thing to get people to think outside themselves, but I think that would go a long way.
I want to drill down a little bit to your point. You want the guy that's not going to turn the ball over as well. It's not just about possessing the ball. It's about giving it up as well.
Yeah. And I mean, but sometimes, you know what, like, I've seen there's a lot of goals in my career that I've seen scored because somebody shot at a time when no one in the rink thought they were going to shoot. And so it's like, how do you harness that, like, play the team game and play smart, but without killing that creativity and killing that sort of loose cannonness that kind of, like, I just don't remember what Alex Keto Hill, like, in the corner falling over and throws it around the world while falling over from and it goes in. And it's just like, no one else on the planet would score that goal. He does, because he's the only one who would try it. And it's, how do you keep that in the game while still being like, okay, like, there was a much better look over here. Like, just give up that ball. So
I think what you're saying is, it's about shooting when it's right to shoot until it's not. It's the not that's hard to predict.
Well, and actually, sometimes what I found the real hardest, and, like, I was a guy who did this, and I've had to help a lot of players with this, is you get the guy who should be shooting, who wants to pass because they don't want to get called the hog. And it's like, no, like, that's sometimes shooting, like, that's not a selfish play. If you're in the prime scoring area and you've got a great hands-free shot, like, take that shot. Please, for the love of God, take that shot. Right. And that's always hard for some guys to get used to, because they don't want to be seen as the hog. Meanwhile, there's a guy who's taking a shot from 20 feet outside of that with a guy in front of him who's like, no, I'm shooting because this is going to go in, and it does. So Yeah, weighing that balance is always tough.
And this is why parents say, I love you as much as your sister or brother, but I got to treat you differently.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my coaches in college, actually, to that same point, said something that was, we don't treat everybody equally, but we treat everybody fair.
There you go. Well, that's
fair isn't necessarily equal.
Yeah, because everybody brings something different to the table, right? So that's the beauty of being a coach, and that's what creates the best coaches out there. They're the coaches that understand the relationship between each player and the game itself. It isn't always the same thing. The robotic attempts by some coaches, I don't think they're very successful because, like you said, they're not open to allowing a player to be the player they are.
Yeah, and that's, like, that's why all whenever I coach, whatever my systems, and I don't think, you try to fit every team to your system, you're not going to work. Like, you got to fit your system to the team. But like, it's why, like, I've never been a big believer in plays. Like, my whole thing is to give kids a system. Not that it's okay, you have to do this, but I always say there's like 3 levels to offense, right? There's kind of reading your teammates and where they are, and then there's reading the defense, and then there's reading where the defense is going to be, and those are those 3 levels of understanding offense. But like, when you're having to think about, okay, well, I need to go here, and I need to go here, and I need to go here, you can't get to those other levels. But giving them a structure of like, okay, this is basically the motion that we're going to do to start everything. Like, when that starts to become muscle memory, now your mind doesn't have to be worried about, okay, I need to worry about this pick's coming, because it's coming. You're now being able to look, okay, well, this pick's coming. Who's my first slide? Okay, now I can read that. And then you get to the point where, like, okay, he's 2 steps up high, which means that guy on the backside is going to be filtering into that open spot. So I'm going to change my angle up here and draw him further out so that guy is more open. Like, but I try to put kids in a position where the less they can have to think about the basic stuff, so that their minds can start being creative, and that they can start, doing and putting their stamp on the system, the better. Because that's where I feel, you're going to get the best across. And when kids understand the basics, so that they're able to think 1-2 steps ahead, and they're able to do things that they might not otherwise do because their mind's not tied up in sort of the basic rotation.
Coaching 101.
I'm a bit of a nerd on this stuff too. Everybody finds it as exhilarating.
I'm okay with nerds.
Yeah. I one last thing for you is, what's next on the docket for Graham Bergsma?
Headed to Mexico at 3 a.m. Which
Nice.
Kind of sucks. I had to miss a game because I was like, we had to reschedule. I was deathly ill, so I missed the game for Paris, and then I've got to miss a game in Mexico. But next on the docket is just getting back in with the Wolves and trying to have, build on what was a really good but disappointing end to a season last year. And we've got a really good young group of kids. And so trying to help us grow every single day and avenge last year and hopefully take the Arena Lacrosse League Championship. That's what's next for me. And then back to Prague, and then Collingwood in the summer.
Absolutely. I'll see you in all of that.
Yeah.
I'll see you in ALL. I'll see you in Prague, and I'll see you in Collingwood and the rest of OSL. I am on the board now, so.
Oh, perfect. That's nice. That's good to have you on board.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty happy about that as well.
Yeah.
But I wish you all the best. I wish you a great vacation. I really want to thank you for taking the time and talking about your career with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for everything that you do for highlighting some of the great people in the sport and getting that message out there. Like, I think platforms like yours are a necessity if we're going to continue to grow the game the way we want to, and hearing, different opinions from different people, and including, dummies like me. But I appreciate you for having me on. And I really do love what you guys are doing for the game. So keep it up. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and nothing we love more than talking lacrosse.
Anytime.
Whether it's the NLL or otherwise, it doesn't matter as long as we talk lacrosse and get insights to, the people that are involved in it and what their contribution is and their opinions on the game themselves. We've got a great roster of programs with different people. And I want to thank you for your perspective on this, Graham. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Take it with a grain of salt, but
I think it's a bag of salt. I don't
Yeah,
care.
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter, right?
Back up a dump truck full of salt.
Whatever.
Whatever works.
At the end of the day, it's about figuring stuff out and talking about the game, and we all want the same thing. We want it to grow.
Yeah.
We can agree on one thing, that we love the game. The game's worth watching. The game's exciting. You only have to buy the edge of the seat. You don't need the whole seat. So I don't know what else you can ask from sport, and being a part of a game that you can learn to love. That's what we've learned from all the guests that we have here, whether it's a player, a coach, an owner, or a commissioner. We all have the same feeling, and that is we love the game. And thanks for sharing your love of the game here this week.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, he's Gary Groob, and he's Graham Bergsma. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching NLL Lacrosse Talk. We'll see you again next Thursday.
See you guys.
Well, that's weird. I don't see you. Well, I see you, but I don't see you down on the bottom.